Good morning and a very, very warm welcome to all the parents, teachers, counselors, and thank you for this overwhelming response. The feedback form you have sexual health of your children, uh, and this is part 2. So before you watch this, if you're watching this, first watch part 1. In part 1, we talked about a lot of things and parents were asking about a lot of things like porn and masturbation, and there's very open and very, very nice communication between doctor and a lot of parents. They had a lot of questions. We are going to put more time today. We are going to reserve more time for your question answers, and the topic is very important, very crucial today for us to understand how we start communicating about all these topics. I welcome again Dr. Bhave, and thank you so much for giving your time again. A lot of people wanted a lot of to hear you a lot, and they have demanded for part 2, and so I have troubled you again. And of course, we all know Dr. Bhavi is our favorite, and a very, very well renowned psychiatrist in India. The people travel all around and they come for his consultation, and yeah, and a very nice speaker and a singer as well. So yes, we begin. Thank you, doctor, once again. So we start with the question answers the way we did last time. We see young children as young as 2 years old are sexually abused or molested.
Yeah.
So there are two levels of questions. One, how can parents support them when they disclose these things, and how can even counselors, when any case of molestation comes to them, how do they approach and how they support and help them?
Right. So first of all, thanks a lot for calling me here today. It's really a great pleasure to be sitting in front of so many people and discussing things with you. The first part of the question, I mean, how do the parents respond to a child who is reporting sexual abuse? First thing is, it's not easy for children to come out with narration of a sexual abuse, especially because very, very commonly, in fact, more often than not, the abuser is somebody close to the family. I mean, it could be somebody as close as mama, dadaji, nanaji, I mean, grandparents, cousins, occasionally real siblings. I mean, these can indulge in sexual abuse. So first rule is that whenever a child reports such a thing, listen to it calmly, believe the child. That's very important. Because very often, I mean, especially if the relative is close enough. I mean, for example, if a child relating about mamaji, and I've seen many instances of this, the mother would say कि नहीं नहीं बेटा ऐसा नहीं हो सकता, वो तो ऐसे नहीं करेंगे, वो बहुत अच्छे हैं. So I mean, the child feels let down. There's something so abhorrible has happened to me, and my own mother is not believing me. So believe the child. Children, as a rule, children do not lie about these things. I mean, when a 6-year-old child reports an abuse, like being touched inappropriately, certainly, then she's not lying. I mean, take it as a rule. So it has to be accepted on the face value. The parents should listen to it sympathetically in a caring manner. Very importantly, not induce any guilt in the child. Because I have again seen this commonly कि बेटा तुमने ही कुछ किया होगा, तुमने ऐसी कोई बात की होगी, तुमने ऐसा ड्रेस पहना होगा, इसलिए उन्होंने ऐसा किया, नहीं तो वो वैसे नहीं हैं. So, I mean, that induces guilt in a child, because as it is, when a small child reports these kind of things to the parent, the child already has started feeling guilty even before reporting. That did I go wrong? I mean, was it about me and not about him? So, I mean, by not accepting what the child is saying, you are merely increasing the guilt. So take care that don't say anything that increases the guilt. And I think as a parent, it's very, very important to take action. I mean, you have been reported an instance and this has to be acted upon. And no matter how severe the action is, I mean, you could debar the person from your life. You could throw the person out of your home if he's staying with you, like say some cousin or some relative who is staying with you. I mean, he should not be staying with you anymore. Make every, I mean, ensure in every possible way that that person will not be coming in contact with the child in the near future. So I think these are some of the initial things that the parent needs to do. And it's also important to remember that children's account of the molestation that can vary from narration to narration. I mean, it need not be exactly the same. I mean, in case of adults, when they are being tried in the court of law, in cross-examination, the lawyer would try to pinpoint holes ki last time आपने ऐसा कहा था, इस बार आप ऐसा कह रहे हैं, so there's a disparity. But in case of children, a disparity can occur between the accounts. So that's acceptable. But as I said earlier, a child reporting such a thing does not lie. Believe it.
I think this is such an important point that sometimes parents don't believe. So first is to believe them and then take action. You
Yeah.
know, because the security of our child is important, and they are already scared. They're scared of the abuser. So it's important that
चार्जर था ना यहाँ पे रखा था, चार्जर लगा हुआ था.
that person is not around. Yeah, great. Thank you, doctor. Also, you know, sometimes they are not even able to talk. They are not even able to talk. They are not able to share because again they are scared. They feel insecure. उनको लगता है उनको ही शायद पनिश किया जा सकता है और ये वजह से वो बताते भी नहीं है. सो कैसे पेरेंट्स, क्या ऐसे साइंस होते हैं जहां से पेरेंट्स को समझ में आता है कि कुछ तो गड़बड़ है?
Yeah, I mean, there are signs. For example, a child who for unexplained reasons which are not apparent, suddenly starts showing some behavioral changes. Like, for example, a child who has been abused might become withdrawn, might start talking less to everybody, or the opposite, the child might become too clingy. The child might cling to the mother too often. The child starts showing signs of anxiety, like having difficulty in sleeping. I mean, a fragmented sleep, keeps on awakening at night, or having more of nightmares. Children do show a regressed behavior. Regress means, I mean, they kind of move to an earlier era of development, whereby a child who has developed toilet control might start passing urine in the clothes, or might start passing feces in the clothes in the daytime or in the night. So regression could happen. Children might start playing with toys in a sexual manner. I mean, between two toys or within the same toy, the child might indulge in actions that show some awareness of the adult-like sexual activity that goes on. Sometimes there could be physical signs, like a child who is showing unexplained bruises on the body. Children who have difficulty in urination or pain in defecation. Now, let me clarify here that all of these signs can be signs of something else also. I mean, it's not necessary that a child who becomes withdrawn is definitely sexually molested. But these are some of the, I wouldn't call them telltale signs, but then these are some of the things that could happen. And I think it depends on putting one and one together to make it two. I mean, there have to be more than one signs, or when there is something explicitly obvious about the molestation. Sometimes children start avoiding going to places or meeting people. कि नहीं मम्मी मेरे को उन अंकल के यहाँ नहीं जाना है, बिल्कुल नहीं जाना. I mean, the child does not explain why he doesn't want to go to that place. Or the child might start avoiding specific people. कि वो अपने घर पे बिल्कुल नहीं आने चाहिए, या मैरिज में आपने उनको बिल्कुल नहीं बुलाना है. So those kind of things. So these are some of the signs that the parents should be cautious about. And if they find any of these signs, then more probing, more empathetic, warm questioning is required.
Right. So, see, there are very, very clear-cut indications and signs. Sometimes it may not be necessarily this, but whenever parents see some signs, they have to sit down and talk to, have a dialogue in a very, very empathetic way, so that child is feels safe and secure to talk about these things.
Yeah.
Correct. Doctor, we are going to change a topic a little bit and talk about live-in relationships. So today, I mean, of course, there's a legal stamp, and culture and communities where this thing is seen as a taboo. How do parents really approach with this topic?
Yeah. I mean, if they learn that their son or daughter started live-in, is that the question?
Yes, doctor.
Yeah. See, whenever a child reports that he wants to stay with his or her girlfriend, boyfriend, Then, the listening, like always, has got to be patient listening, exhibiting your caring attitude all the time. And when a child reports that, the reasons for which the child is doing that may not always be healthy. So I think it's the duty of the parents to discuss the pros and cons of living with the child. I mean, living is not a complete no-no. I mean, there can be pros also. So, I mean, these need to be discussed rationally, calmly with the child. Now, just to give some examples, like some of the pros that the parents can discuss are कि ठीक है अगर शादी के पहले एक साथ रहने लगे हैं तो इट्स a kind of trial period. I mean, you get to know each other better. I mean, living in separate homes as girlfriend or boyfriend is different, but living together, I mean, that generates many situations that might alarm you that no, I mean, I cannot be staying with this person for the rest of my life. So it's a kind of trial period. So that's a pro. Then freedom to leave is there. I mean, since it does not have all the rigmarole of marriage and the legal things surrounding it, I mean, leaving a partner in a live-in is easier. With all their shared experiences during the living period, if they go on to marry, then the bonding is likely to be better than complete strangers coming together. So these are a few pros that I can think of. But then cons also need to be discussed. The child has to be told that, beta, if you want to indulge in a living relationship, then remember that one, there is a social stigma attached to it. So you will have to withstand that, the social stigma. And secondly, I mean, once living partners marry, there's a somewhat a downside to it that the honeymoon phase of staying together is already over.
Yes.
I mean,
Yes.
I might say that all the mystique of the marriage, I mean, people, strangers who are marrying each other, there's a mystique in the marriage, like how is this person? I mean, I have to find out and I'll have to be good to him. The exhilaration that comes with a new marriage, I mean, newly married couple, I mean, we see the way they hold hands at honeymoon destinations,
Yes.
all that. So, I mean, those kind of things are generally absent because they have already known each other for long. So, I mean, these are some of the pros and cons. There can be more, but then these are some. So, I think these need to be discussed with the child. That okay, you are planning to do this, but remember this. Means I will not outright prohibit you from doing it, but then you need to remember these things.
Right, doctor. So only when children are talking about living relationship or if they are into living relationship, that time they should talk, or parents should start talking about these subjects at certain age.
I would think that they could start talking even before children actually engage in living. I mean, at an appropriate opportunity. I mean, like I discussed last time, it should not be a lecture कि चलो आज living के बारे में discuss करेंगे. I mean, that would seem too artificial. But then if topic of living comes up, then you could casually mention that, yeah, these days it's common, but then, I mean, there's a downside to it also. I mean, there are pluses, but then there are minuses. So, I mean, introducing the pluses and minuses in the mind, even before the child has declared his or her plans, I think that's important. But sometimes, I mean, the plans are not known. I mean, your child who is staying in Bangalore might tell you one day that I'm living.
I'm there. Already I'm there. Yeah.
Then you have to discuss in some detail.
Yes. Yes. And it's important to discuss pros as well as cons, And if we are discussing only cons, children will probably come with long list of pros. So it's always better that parents talk both the sides of it.
Yeah, certainly. I mean, both the sides are important because, I mean, we don't want to appear sermonizing.
Yes.
अगर मैं यही कहूँ कि नहीं बेटा उसे ये हो सकता है, ये हो सकता है, ये हो सकता है, ये हो सकता है, the child will say ये तो बुड्ढे हो गए. I mean, they have no connect with our generation. So, I mean, let them know that you are aware of the pros and cons both.
And how do we ensure, how parents can ensure that it's done for a right reason, not just to escape from some problems or just, as a excuse for something.
Yeah. I think the right reasons are also very important. If you think of the right or the wrong reasons, I would think that the right reasons could be that I want to get to know her better. I want to know him better. I mean, I think he is the right partner for me, but I think after living for, say, X, Y, Z duration, I would know him better. That could be one right reason. But to some extent, the right reason could be like if the marriage cannot be done early enough, then and if the longing is too much, so much so that the person is always preoccupied with the person not being able to marry her for so many months, then I would think of that also as a valid reason. Wrong reasons can be, I mean, marrying for sex, just because he or she is attractive. I would like to be living with that person, or marrying for the wealth. I mean, your boyfriend could be wealthy, and then you might think that I start living with him, I can kind of at a conscious or subconscious level, I can I mean use all
Yeah,
that
get into
money that
relationship
he
so
has.
that she cannot back out.
Yeah,
So yeah, he or she cannot back out. If money is the motivation, then maybe get involved physically so that the other person doesn't back out. I mean, that could be a reason.
yeah. It's important to be street smart also.
Yes.
Yeah.
All right. So, doctor, what you're saying is if there is an intention of marriage and if marriage is getting delayed, then it is a right reason.
Yeah.
And otherwise, knowing the person also can be a right reason for getting into live-in relationship. What are the warning signs, doctor, in case if it's an unhealthy or harmful or it may end in an ugly manner? So, is there any warning signs there?
Yeah, there are quite a few. The warning signs of a living relationship, I would say, are largely the same as in any
Relationship.
boy-girl or a man-woman relationship. For example, if you find that your partner is too controlling, I mean, he wants to control the way you're dressing, whom you talk to, how often do you communicate with your biological family. So a lot of controlling happening there. Or somebody who does not seem to respect you. I mean, mutual respect, I would rate it very highly in any kind of male-female relationship. Both have got to respect each other, the way they communicate with each other, the kind of tone that they use for each other. There should be no other undesirable behaviors like ridiculing the person in front of others, which does happen in certain relationships. The blame games should not be happening, that this happened because of you, and I mean blaming the other person for I mean all the negative things that are happening. Gaslighting, a term which is fairly common these days. I mean, making the other person doubt his or her own sanity by, I mean, narrating the kind of things which are really unjustifiable. I mean, not understandable. So, I mean, making the other person feel guilty, feel that he or she is the cause of all the problems. I think that's another sign. Lack of trust. There are partners in whom at least one does not trust the other partner. Like you should not, a boy telling a girl that you should not be talking to your male friend so often. I mean, you should not laugh with him. Why did you send him this emoji and so on? I mean, these are the kind of things that I, as a mental health professional, see very commonly between two people. So, I mean, any of these happening during the living phase, they are a warning bell. I mean, they must tell you that something is wrong. One thing I have noted very commonly is being possessive.
Yes.
I'm putting possessive in quotes because I mean, I've seen more than once youngsters telling me, the doctor, he loves me so much. I said, any examples? And then she says he's very possessive. If I talk to any other boy, then he gets angry with me. वो बड़े लाड से बता रही है. I tell her, भाग खड़ी हो. I mean, leave the relationship. I mean, something that appears as possessiveness or over possessiveness before marriage can easily turn into delusions of infidelity after the marriage. And people can start doubting the fidelity, doubting the loyalty of the marriage partners subsequently. So, I mean, anybody who seems to be kind of over possessive to the extent that he or she does not allow you to mingle with the opposite sex, I think that's a very clear-cut warning signal that this should not progress into a long-term commitment.
I think very, very important points, doctor. One is respect, definitely. And other is giving space and trusting the other person. That is extremely important, but also you give a very nice perspective to being possessive. So it is something that, women, girls and boys, both side, I would say, understand the possessiveness is sometimes becomes controlling as well. Yes. So, doctor, what are the legal and financial implications of living
I
relationship?
think that's a very important topic. With living relationships becoming more and more common in our country, I think the legality of it has got to be understood before one enters into a live-in relationship. Now, let's say that live-in is not illegal. I mean, any person can do it. Okay. Any person above the age of 18 can do it. But it's not a legal union all the same. I mean, live-in partners will not be accorded the same kind of rights and privileges as married partners do. Now, having said that, there are a few caveats like if two people are living together, two partners are living together, then, for example, your female partner can claim maintenance. She can claim maintenance from you if you are not providing for her, but she cannot claim inheritance. Like if you die, then I mean, she's not going to inherit any of it because there's no legal union in the form of marriage. Children born out of living, I mean, that also does happen. So it's important to understand that if a child is born, fir kya? So children have a right to both maintenance and inheritance. So that's important. The wife has a right only to maintenance. Children have a right to both maintenance and inheritance. So they can inherit this man's or the woman's property if the person dies. Question of custody is the same as a married couple. Like if there's a quarrel for the custody in the court for a child born in live-in, the court would decide based on the same parameters as it would in case of a married couple, like the age of the child being taken into consideration. If the child is old enough, what is the child's choice of the parent, with whom would he or she like to stay? So these are some of the legal financial implications.
I think this is very, very crucial for all the young boys and girls to understand that they should take informed decision. Informed decision. They should not. I'll mute everyone and I'll unmute you, doctor, because yeah, sorry. So informed decision is important. You first understand what you're getting into, what are the implications, and then you go ahead with the decision. I mean, it is fine. I mean, live-in relationship has got a stamp of legal stamp, but also your personal life, your career, your goals in life, everything will be affected some way or the other. So you have to be very mindful of the decisions you take. Yeah. Right, doctor. And now coming to changing the track a little bit, we talk about the sexual orientation and gender identity, the LGBTQ plus community.
Yeah.
They are viewed so differently and people are strongly opinionated about them. So generally speaking, what are your views about them?
Yeah. I think you said orientation and identity. Did you say
gender
both?
Identity and sexual orientation.
Right.
Yes.
So first of all, I would like to briefly tell what these two are. Sexual orientation refers to the sex you are romantically or sexually attracted to. I mean, am I attracted to a boy or a girl romantically oblique sexually? That's my orientation. Like most people are heterosexual. That's their orientation. Some have an homosexual orientation. Gender identity, now that's an important term. It refers to a subjective feeling of maleness or femaleness. I'll repeat that. A subjective inner feeling of maleness or femaleness. मुझे लड़के जैसा लग रहा है कि लड़की जैसा लग रहा है. That's a distinct feeling. I mean, this generally develops around 2.5, 3 years of age. Now, if you ask a 2-year-old child कि बेटा तू लड़का है कि लड़की है, say boy, he'll say मैं लड़का हूँ. Why? Because the parents say so.
Yes.
But if you ask a 4-year-old तू लड़का है कि लड़की है, he'll say मैं लड़का हूँ because by that time he has developed the gender identity that I am a male. So now gender identity is generally congruent. I mean, the anatomical sex and the sex of sex that is accorded to the child, they are generally congruent. They go hand in hand. A boy being assigned a male child and a girl being assigned a female child. Sometimes things can go wrong. So like sometimes anatomically a boy might start feeling like a girl and this feeling might persist throughout life. So now this is gender incongruence. I mean, it's not congruent. The anatomical sex and the sex of assignment, they are different. So that's what these two terms mean.
So how do society view them? And sometimes society is very, or parents are very strongly opinionated.
Yeah.
So when there is a child who has a gender identity or gender orientation different, then they already, because parents are talking things about all this community, then it's very difficult for the child to even open up or accept himself, because he feels that parents are thinking that this is not something that is right.
Yeah.
So how what would you say to them?
See, both these things. I mean, your sexual orientation and your gender identity. Gender identity is completely biological. I mean, it's not a question of choice. मुझे लड़के जैसे लग रहा है कि लड़की जैसे लग रहा है, मेरे हाथ में नहीं है. Simply, it's biological. Sexual orientation, in some cases, for temporary periods of time, can be psychological. Like people who do not have an availability of an opposite sex partner. Like say in prisons, men would indulge in homosexuality, but when they come out, they are completely heterosexual. In adolescence, children might indulge in homosexual behavior, but they outgrow it after the age of 18 or 19 years. So barring these exceptions, even homosexuality occurs at a biological level. So it's extremely important for every person in the society to understand that these are not matters of choice. I mean, people would remember that I think that was 2018, Supreme Court abolished Article 377
Yes.
Of the IPC that said that homosexuality was a crime. Now, this was an archaic law that came in 1862 with the Britishers formulating the Indian Penal Code. It was highly outdated, and fortunately, it was homosexuality was decriminalized. And the reason was largely the same. I mean, when the trial was happening for many years, unfortunately, one single member Supreme Court judge, he said, you know, it continues to be a crime. I used to feel very sad. I mean, my contention was singular contention that it's not a matter of choice.
Yes.
I mean, you can't say that it's illegal to have a height of less than 5 feet 6 inches. It's illegal not to be fair in your complexion. I mean, these are not our choices. So it's something like that. So every person should know that these are not a matter of choice. So if a child reports that I am a homosexual or I do feel like a female, I want to get converted to a female, one has got to completely validate it, agree with it, because it's simply not a choice. I mean, I find making some parents understand this a little difficult. I mean, I often, as a mental health professional, I often encounter these parents who come with children कि डॉक्टर साहब इसको समझाइए ये सब नाटक बंद करे. I mean, they use those kind of derogatory terms. So I mean, they need much counseling, they need much convincing that, bhaiya, it's not a question of choice. He's born that way. God has made him that way, and I mean, you have to accept it. That's the way things are.
I think the example that you used just now, that you cannot be punished for your height or your complexion. So it is as biological or as natural, and you have no control over it. So I think that says it all, that this is something where the children, they have no control, and it's not their choice, it is the nature. So I mean, that one thing will really help parents to understand the situation that they are into. And how can parents support, understand, and accept?
Yeah, I think that's another important point as to how do parents respond to a child who reports that he or she has, I mean, he is a member of the LGBTQ community. First of all, like I always say, I mean, listen to the child empathetically, validate the child's feeling. Now, we hope that every member of the community is educated enough. Tell the child that, yeah, I mean, I understand there are issues like that. These kind of things do happen. So I understand the kind of things you are undergoing, the way you feel. So validate it. Let the child not feel that he or she is isolated. I mean, there could be instances when you don't really agree with it. I mean, you still continue with the traditional view. But even for those parents, I tell them that continue to be parent. I mean, you may not really find it desirable or like what the son is saying, but then continue to be parent, as caring, as empathetic as a parent should generally be. Now, when a child confesses that, it's important to stand up for the child.
Yes.
The child could be bullied, the child could be mistreated, the child could be ridiculed, but stand up with the child. I mean, it's important to convey to the people that I am completely with him. I mean, I have got many youngsters with gender dysphoria or homosexuality, and I have to tell the parents that uh, a common statement is, डॉक्टर साहब लोग क्या कहेंगे,
हाँ.
समाज को क्या मुंह दिखाएंगे. My simple answer is कि the samaj will react largely based on how you behave. I mean, if you tell the Samaj ki I am completely with my child, I mean, this condition is not his choice. He's made that way. I'm completely with him. I completely support him. I mean, that changes things drastically. I mean, the way your family looks at it, the way your neighbors look at it. So let people know that you are with the child. It's important to let the child indulge in any kind of self-expression that he or she wants. Like your daughter who has got gender incongruence. Now, if she wants to have her hair cut like a boy, if she wants to wear shirts and pants instead of feminine dresses, I mean, let her indulge in that kind of self-expression, because it's only natural that she would like to do that. If she has a girl romantic partner, be completely okay with it, because uh, I mean, everybody should know that a person with gender incongruence would choose a sexual partner of the same anatomical sex, because inwardly she's a boy. I mean, she's
Yes.
not a girl inwardly. So, I mean, it's only biologically appropriate that she'll choose a male as a partner. So stand by that. It's also important to get I mean, help your son get in touch with LGBTQ communities, LGBTQ resources, I mean, which can empower your child to face the world in an easier manner. So, yeah. So, I mean, these are the kind of things that can be done by the parents.
Yes, yes. Thank you so much, doctor. Accept and stand by them. That is so important. Yes, and लोग क्या कहेंगे? लोग वही कहेंगे जो आप कहोगे. Right? So you have to have that solid support system around your child. And also, sometimes extended families. So it starts with parents and then extended family ki oh iska beta aisa iski beti aisi hai. So that is the time when parents have to really really take a strong stand.
Yeah.
And,
That's what I find this problem is joint families.
yes.
Like a father would tell me, डॉक्टर साहब मैं तो समझ लेता हूँ मेरी बेटी है, पर मेरे बड़े भैया समझ नहीं पाएंगे. I mean, they are living in a joint family. The बड़े भैया is a father figure. I mean, he is the one who decides कि ये क्या पढ़ेगी, कहाँ शादी करेगी. And I have to tell them something which is not very, I mean, music to their ears कि बेटी आपकी है. I mean, her ultimate benefactor, her ultimate well-wisher is you and her mother. So, I mean, with due respect to your brother, I mean, as a doctor, I'm telling you this, and now you need to think of your own and not think based on what others are thinking.
Yes. And if parents, being the source of the child, if they are strong enough and they are able to communicate and protect their children, I think nothing matters then. And also communities, doctor, you talked about communities. This is so important, and there are every place, I think, in a larger or smaller group, there are communities of LGBTQs, and that will give them a support system, that I am not alone, I am not isolated, there are many people like me. So I think this is important point where we have to attach them with those communities. Doctor, schools and how do schools and other communities, is there anything that they can do? Because the college that I work with, I see a lot of students who are in this category, and they are bullied also, and also they are very shy, they feel shame on themselves. So how can schools and other institutions, colleges, educational institutions, how can they support, and what they should be doing?
See, I think parents are perhaps the most important via media in this. And I mean, standalone child who is facing these issues would find it very difficult to do his own advocacy or see things changed. But the parents need to do it. The parents need to help the child. And the parents can help the child in various ways. Like, for example, we talk of schools. Now, there are the parents need to do advocacy for an LGBTQ child at the school. For example, I mean, trying to convince the administration or the principal about a zero tolerance policy for bullying. And try to see to it, maybe with the help of other parents, that the tolerance for bullying should be zero tolerance policy. Or maybe it could be something like the child being given a choice of what toilet to use. I mean, some children with gender dysphoria or gender incongruence, I mean, they would like to use the toilet of the opposite, anatomically the opposite sex. So, I mean, the school authorities have got to understand that. In other spheres also this can be done. I think it's important and interesting to note that there is training in advocacy for LGBTQ also. And if a parent explores on the internet, one can find various avenues whereby they can get trained on how to do advocacy for somebody that they know. So getting trained in that, getting knowledgeable about the kind of community resources available for these children, so that, I mean, you can get in touch with those kind of resources that will help your child. Then learning about the laws also, I think that's very important. Now, a good news for the LGBTQ community in India was that in 2019, a Transgender Protection of Right Acts was promulgated. Transgender Protection of Rights Act. And it's available freely on the internet. And if one goes through that, you can find a large number of ways in which the rights of these people are protected. Like some examples that I gave, like what kind of toilet to use. I mean, what kind of pronouns the person would like to use. Okay. Then there are legal, legal helps in the form of transgender ID cards. The district magistrate issues transgender ID cards, which can be taken help of to change one's name, one's gender in any service or in any institution. So, I mean, all these things are available. So, I think it's very important that the parents get more knowledgeable about all the issues that the LGBTQ people face, how to circumvent them, how to prevent them, and then comes the advocacy part.
Right. I think knowledge about what is available for them itself will give them how to fight for their rights.
Yeah.
Right. So knowing about all the laws is important for them.
Yeah.
Thank you, Doctor. So we invite for questions now. So those who have any questions, you can put it in the chat box. There's one question already there, and it is about bisexuality. If you can talk a little bit on bisexuality.
Yeah. Bisexuality is a sexual orientation which is directed towards both males and females. I mean, if I'm to talk of the statistics, roughly 3% people in the community all over the world are homosexuals, roughly 3%, and 4% are bisexual. So we would have gays and lesbians, 3%, but bisexual, I mean, sexually attracted to both the sexes, they are 4%. So that's what bisexuality is. And in fact, bisexuality is also very common. Like I would like to say here that whenever I'm talking to a homosexual patient who comes to me, so the typical questions I ask to explore into bisexuality is, I mean, some questions, illustrative ones, कि अगर एक हैंडसम लड़का जा रहा हो और एक सुंदर लड़की जा रही हो, आप किसको देखना ज्यादा पसंद करेंगे? See what the person answers. The boy might say कि वैसे तो दोनों ही अच्छे लगते हैं, ज्यादा किसको दोनों में से अगर एक चुनना है तो किसको पसंद करोगे? तो मैं लड़के को चुनूंगा. Then I say, okay, are you attracted to both? He said, yeah, to some degree, yes. Then I asked them कि on a 0 to 10 scale, homosexuality कितनी है और heterosexuality कितनी है? And then he might say कि 0 to 10 तो 6 तक homosexual है, बाकी, I mean, बाकी का 4 heterosexual. So that tells me that he is a bisexual with more homosexual leaning. Because homosexuality need not be at the extremes. Yani it's not either pakka heterosexual or pakka homosexual, but it can lie in between, which is bisexuality.
Thank you, Doctor. And this is a very good way of asking also to children at the scale of 0 to 10. Anything that you want to ask, when you know the scale, then it's easy for you to determine what is happening. What is the right age?
Yes. Sorry for interruption. Another very important question I asked them is, when you masturbate, I mean, what's your dominant fantasy? I would ask a boy, when you masturbate, is it a male that you fantasize or is it a female? And that answer is very illustrative. That tells us a lot.
Yes, I think very well explained, Doctor. Thank you. This was such an important question. And I'll go to more questions. now. Let me just look at the chat box. What is the right age to get married for a good relationship?
Yeah. See, I would think that the right age to marry should be 25 and upwards.
Hmm.
I think last time we had discussed that the emotional seat in our brain, the limbic system, it's present right since the birth. I mean, from the birth itself, we have emotions, but the seat for proper social judgment, insight, foresightedness, that lies in the prefrontal cortex behind this our frontal bone. I mean, that develops in the early 20s. It keeps on developing till early 20s and develops up to mid 20s. So my thought is that, I mean, unless that faculty for your critical judgment, your farsightedness, your ability to, think in very broad terms, abstract terms is completely developed, I mean, marriage should not be happening. And which, in my opinion, is mid 20s onwards. I mean,
Boys and girls, is there any difference in the age?
No, not really. I mean, socially, things have been rather difficult. I mean, we know that for girls, it was 18, for boys, it was 21, the legally marriageable age. But lately, it has been 21 for both. I mean, both boys and girls can marry only after 21. I would think that even 21 is not really advanced enough. I mean, at 21, now all the faculties needed to be a good married partner, to be a parent. I mean, when you become a married partner, nothing prohibits you from begetting children. So, I mean, parenthood का भी सोचना पड़ता है. I mean, are you fit enough to be a parent by 21? I mean, physically, yes, but emotionally, intellectually, maybe not. I would think 25 or more. I mean, these days, thankfully, girls are marrying late, especially the urban girls. I mean, we very commonly see girls marrying at 26, 27, 28, 29. And I'm required to very commonly counsel the parents. Parents कहते हैं, डॉक्टर साहब लड़की के शादी की बहुत चिंता है. And I ask कि उम्र क्या है? डॉक्टर साहब 25 साल की है. मैं कहता हूँ बहुत छोटी है अभी तो. आजकल शादियां ऐसी होती हैं. 27, 28, 29, 30 साल में बिल्कुल चिंता नहीं करें. जितनी
Yes.
थोड़ी बाद में शादी करेगी, 25 से 30 साल is the right age.
Right age nowadays.
Sorry?
Nowadays, it is right age. Earlier,
yeah.
there used to be marriages as early as 19 and 20.
Yeah. I mean, उसके पहले तो और
और जल्दी 13
खतरनाक
14
हालत थी. I mean, my Nani got married when she was 13. Her mother got married when she was 9. I mean, we all have families like that, which I think was disastrous. I mean, sex would happen at the onset of puberty, and I think that was very, very undesirable.
Yes, and we have evolved for good.
Certainly. It's for the good.
Yeah. So, question is how to talk about sex education with boys in school who are adolescent, or we should not raise such issues. This is in school.
Yeah. See, I think we partly had discussed this thing last time. At different age groups, the content of what we talk, it keeps on varying. Like we're talking about sexuality, we discussed last time, can start something for a child who is 3 or 4 years old also. But in adolescence, in any phase of life, we talk of the sexual things that the child is likely to encounter at that age and the subsequent age. यानी वो वाली एज और उसके जस्ट बाद में जो आने वाली है. So for an adolescence, the discussion should be on things like protection during sex, the harms that can arise because of absence of protection, about teenage pregnancies and the kind of harm that they can indulge, about the choice of sexual choice of even marriage partners. I mean, if you want to have a long-term commitment, what the kind of partner you should look for. So these are the kind of issues that we discuss in case of adolescents. And if you think that the adolescent is because adolescence is a big age group, it's from 13 to 19. So, I mean, a 13-year-old child and a 19-year-old would be quite different in their knowledge, in their attitude, in their behaviors. So for a younger child, a younger adolescent, one could talk on, things like pregnancy, reproduction, nocturnal emissions, masturbations, and those kind of things. It depends on the age, but largely these are kind of topics that we need to handle.
Yeah, so different classrooms, we can have different level of educating them. The question is, Doctor, what help is available to validate the thought of being a homosexual in a child is a passing experimentation or more permanent in nature?
Yeah. See, I think it would be wise to think of an adolescent homosexuality as perhaps being a passing phase. Perhaps, not always, but perhaps. Because as I mentioned some time back, experimental homosexuality does happen in adolescents. I mean, especially adolescents who are thrown in together for 24 hours, like adolescents staying in hostels, sharing their rooms. They would, they are curious about sexuality in both the sexes. So things like, watching each other's genitals, mutual masturbation, and things like that can happen in adolescents in a homosexual manner. But most children outgrow it. Now, I said that homosexuality is found in 3% people. Okay. So all these 3% would start showing their homosexual behavior right from the adolescence, but ultimately it's only 3% who are going to stick to it. The rest are all going to outgrow it as they get more chances of mingling with the opposite sex, as the sexual hormones kick in, as the attraction of opposite sex increases. So in adolescence, more often than not, it's a passing phase. So it need not be taken as a permanent stamp of homosexuality.
Yeah. So most likely they will get out of this phase.
Yeah.
So just adding to that question only, the thing is, or also when the sexual incongruencies are there. So at that time also we see that they outgrow this.
Now, when you say sexual incongruency, I mean, do you
Yeah,
mean?
if this is making any sense. So the question was totally this, that being a homosexual in a child is a passing experimentation or more permanent in nature, also when the this sexual incongruencies.
See, now, frankly, there is no technical term like sexual incongruence, but I mean, we do have a gender incongruence. I referred to it earlier. Gender incongruence is when the anatomical sex is not the same as the assigned sex, the sex assigned at birth. So that's a gender incongruence. And we have discussed about that.
Yes.
I mean, if we find gender incongruence, then again, in those cases, it would be prudent to wait till adolescence is over. Because there are, in mental health parlance, there are two categories: gender incongruence of childhood and gender incongruence of adulthood. And these two are different categories. Children or adolescents who show gender incongruence might outgrow it. The younger the child, the more is the possibility that he or she will outgrow it. The older the child, the less is the possibility. So an adolescent who is say 17, 18 years of age, if he is showing gender incongruence, then larger chances are that he will continue to be an adult with gender incongruence. But then one has got to wait. I mean, in Western countries, we see, in our opinion, a very unhealthy trend that even adolescents with gender incongruence, they are being subjected to medical treatments to change their anatomical sex. Like a girl being administered male hormones just because she feels like a boy. Now, in India, that's not allowed. In India, very wisely, adolescents are not to be treated, and only after 19 years, 18 years of age, after attaining adulthood, only can medical management happen.
Because still it is very unsettled age at that time. So we need to give some time to really have the clarity.
Yeah.
So the question is how to teach sex education for a person with disability.
Sex education for a person with disability would largely be no different from a sex education for an average child. See, the sexual needs of children with disability. Now, I'm not talking of mental disability. I mean, if there's an intellectual disability, then things change. Intellectual disability is something that was known earlier as mental retardation or mental handicap. Now, there a lot depends on the age of the child as to what you will tell the child. But if it's a physical disability, like say cerebral palsy or say blindness or deafness or say paraplegia or something like that, now in those cases, the sex education would be the same. Because these children are as prone to sexual difficulties, sexual misconceptions as any average child. So that should not be varying.
How about intellectual disability, doctor? When the child is not able to kind of cognitively understand or articulate the whole thing.
Yeah. See, for children who are intellectually disabled, um, we need to talk about लोगों के सामने क्या करना चाहिए, क्या नहीं करना चाहिए. We discussed last time. So, for
Yes.
example, intellectually disabled children, the common kind of sexual activities they indulge in are masturbation in front of people, inappropriate touching strangers or even their own family members. So, in such cases, the child has to be told firmly but politely that this should not be done because people do not like it. I mean, I've seen children touching their mother, intellectually disabled children touching their mother's breast or mother's hip very commonly. And that the child has to be told very firmly that this must not be done. I mean, it has to be told very seriously. And I mean, this might have to be repeated multiple times because it's not that intellectually disabled children would listen to you at the very first instruction. But this might have to be repeated in stronger voice, louder voice, and more often than not, they do respond to it. If these kind of things do not help, then it's important to take the help of a mental health professional. I think it is true by and large. I mean, if there's any psychological sexual problem of your child that you are not able to handle at your own level, taking the help of a mental health professional is very important.
Right, doctor. The next question is, what if some type of childhood trauma happens? Do frontal lobe functions develop by 25?
They do. I mean, the age of frontal lobe, prefrontal lobe development and your judgment developing, it does not change. It continues to be the same. What is more affected is the limbic system, the seat of emotions inside you in the central part of your head. So your emotional brain gets more affected. And I mean, as we say in the common language, that kind of alters the hardwiring of your brain often forever. I mean, a child who has undergone significant trauma in childhood finds it very difficult to overcome it unless he or she gets a very supportive environment, unless he undergoes psychotherapy with a good psychotherapist, adequate psychotherapy. Only those kind of things can make a difference. But yeah, I mean, the brain does get affected in the longer run.
But they need more of emotional counseling, like for their emotions and feelings more than anything else at that time.
That is
My 11-year-old son saw this post of sex education, and the mother is talking about our session that we had last time, the part 1, and probably she was watching it or something. And then the son started asking, what is sex education? And I was speechless. And I told him that I will get back to you soon. How should I approach him? Now, see, we are so scared, even with the word of sex or sex education. So, and when children, as 11 is still not very young, I would say, but we just don't know how to talk. So, doctor, if you can really
I think
help us. Yeah.
For me, this question indicates understandability and wisdom. Understandability that you are speechless. I mean, it's understandable for an Indian parent to become speechless, but it's wise of you to say, I'll get back to you.
Yes.
I think that's very good. I mean, if you didn't have the right answer at that particular time, I mean, it's completely okay to say, but I will discuss this subsequently. I'll get back to you. Now, when a child asks what is sex education, a plain, like I said last time, the answer should be honest, sincere, and in a language that the child understands. So the answer to such a question can be, it's educating a child about the future of male-female relationships, as to how they should happen, how they should not happen. So it involves those kind of things. That can be simple.
Yes, and I think if you watch part 1, there's a lot of guidance given on this topic. And so the same mother is saying that otherwise he doesn't ask me any questions about sex, and he has asked and I'm very confused how to talk. Now, if he's not asking many questions, I suppose, doctor, the mother and child needs to talk more about, because now is the age when they will have more and more questions, and they should have that open communication so that the child asks a lot of questions. So if you would like to say something about this.
Yeah, that's very true. I mean, I had emphasized it significantly last time that a great deal depends on the nature of parent-child communication. I mean, it's always very helpful if the parent has a very open communication with the child, a communication which involves listening to the child respectfully, completely, trying to answer all the questions that the child has. As I said last time, at the end of discussion, ask the child, is there something else you want to ask? We could discuss more if you have any more questions in the future. So showing the child that you are completely open to the topic, you are not averse to it, and leaving room open for subsequent discussion on this topic. So it's only that kind of communication that can help you give adequate sex education to the child. In many families, that does not happen. Now, in some families, I find it's not uncommon in our country that the parent still continues to find it very difficult to talk about sex. So in such cases, it would not be out of place to give, I mean, a grown-up child, say pubescent child or early adolescent child, maybe a small book on sex education, on the things that I mean, we have books like that. You could look for them on online platforms. Things my adolescent boy should know, or things my adolescent child should know. So no harm, I mean, gifting such a book to the child. The child can go to that will show the child that you are quite okay with he knowing about the topic. You want him to learn about it, and you can tell the child, better you can go through this, and if you have any questions, you are free to ask them. So in all probability, the child will have questions. So I'm sure to him that you are quite okay with discussing subsequently. So giving a booklet or a small book is quite okay. I mean, if you are not very comfortable verbally discussing it.
Yes. And also just not, as you mentioned, doctor, just not to give the literature or book about it and not to leave him like that.
Yeah.
Because, you know, he will have a lot of ideas and questions. So it's important to go back and ask questions and clarify those things. Yes. The next question is how to rehabilitate an adult who is schizophrenic and masturbates continuously and is living with a psychotic mother.
Yeah, very difficult situation.
Yes.
I mean, a child with schizophrenia and a mother with schizophrenia. I mean, I hope there is somebody who is not having any mental illness in the family, like say father who does not have a mental illness. Now, first of all, the first thing is getting both of them treated adequately, because schizophrenia is basically a disease of the brain which arises because of some chemical and physiological disturbances inside the brain. So, जो biology से निकला है, उसका treatment biologically करना पड़ता है. So, it has got to be done with medicines. जो chemical लोचा है, वो chemical से ही ठीक होगा. So, medication is a must. Taking both of them to a psychiatrist regularly is very important. There are instances when they would be unwilling to see a psychiatrist. So in that case, I mean, there are psychiatrists in most cities who do make a home visit. So the psychiatrist can come home, examine them, give the appropriate treatment. So getting them treated properly is the mainstay. Because in case, like in the question that you asked, if the boy is boy with schizophrenia who is masturbating regularly. Now, as I said last time, if he is masturbating in privacy, not in front of people, don't bother. Masturbation is a completely normal activity. I would say animal activity, because even animals are known to masturbate. So it's a completely normal animal activity. No need to worry about that. Only if the patient does that in front of people, then the patient has to be told strongly not to do it in front of people, as I discussed in front of, in case of intellectually disabled children. So, I mean, that's the way you handle it. But the treatment remains the mainstay. I mean, if both of them get treated adequately, that should resolve the problem.
Yes. Thank you, doctor. And I would like to emphasize on the point of whether any kind of mental disorder, illness, medication is important. And many times when they come to the counselor, the psychologist or therapist, it's important for them to listen and absorb the therapy. And for that matter, even when they are into depression. So without medication, they are not in a position to take the therapy as well. So so it's important to have the medications done. If it is a clinical issue, mental health issue, then it's important to have the medications, and then the therapy also works on them.
Yeah.
So it's a combination of both, but it starts with medicines first.
Yeah.
Right, doctor?
Sometimes, yeah, that's very right. Sometimes the parents are not sure about whom to approach a psychotherapist or go to a psychiatrist. It's a
Psychiatrist.
very common question we are asked.
Yes.
Doctor साहब psychiatrist को दिखाना है कि psychologist को दिखाना है? So my answer is don't worry too much about it.
Yes.
Choose any good psychiatrist or a good psychologist, and they will guide you.
Guide.
I mean, it does happen very commonly. Like, for example, I have a team of psychologists working with me. So if I think that this particular patient needs psychotherapy, I would shift the care to the psychotherapist. And in the same fashion, if a psychotherapist thinks that the patient has, say, something like a bipolar disorder, or manic attacks, or schizophrenia, a good psychotherapist will always refer the patient to a psychiatrist. So, I mean, it's quite understandable that a lay person will not be able to really judge कि अपने बेटे को किसको दिखाऊं. So don't worry.
Yes, and it is okay to go to either psychotherapist or psychiatrist because they will guide you to the right place.
Yeah.
Next two questions are about the first session recording. So I would request Anushka or Madhura. Anushka, I see you here. So if you can send the link here in the chat of the first session recording. And also to all the parents here, I want to tell you, if you're into the groups, there are two groups and both the groups has like 1,000 plus parents. So I've shared the link of first recording in both the groups. So you will find it, and I'll share again the first and the second part both. And also if you can place the link here, the first part that we did. The next question is it okay to explain sex education to a younger boy curious about puppies of dogs and how they are born?
Yeah, that's absolutely okay.
Yeah.
I mean, now when we say sex education, it's not the entire gamut of sex education, but sex education geared to that particular age. Like the question can be reframed as, is it okay to talk about sex to a child who is doing that? In fact, using toys or puppies is a very good way of explaining things in sexuality. Like if the child asks कि मम्मा ये इसको अपनी dog को बच्चे कैसे हुए? So then, I mean, you can go that way. I mean, because she loved this particular dog, they came together, and when they came together, she was pregnant. She had these puppies in the belly, and then they came out from near the opening from where she urinates. I mean, that can be made use of in a good way. No harm doing it.
Okay, we are already at 11:05 almost, and we have few questions. So the next question is, I'm a mother of a 12.6 years old daughter. She likes to be alone, don't talk too much, spends long time in the bathroom during bathing. What is the reason behind it? Is this normal? Is this hormonal changes or what?
Yeah. Now, this long time has not been, I mean,
yeah, specified.
How long is long? But I mean, the common reasons for being in the washroom for a long time are there is something. I mean, these are the possibilities. Not that I'm diagnosing the case, but the possibilities are some people have something called obsessive compulsive problems. Like they have compulsions of continuing to wash themselves for a long time. They keep on getting a doubt that maybe I have not cleaned myself adequately. So, I mean, they would keep on scrubbing their body again and again, take bath twice or thrice, take a complete bath, dry themselves, again go for a second bath because they think that they didn't do it properly. So maybe the problem could be an obsessive compulsive one. Then there are children who learn to masturbate in privacy. So I've seen children who spend a long time in the washroom or the bathroom because they have been masturbating. So that's one reason. A child who takes cell phone inside the bathroom is one of the recent reasons. I mean,
very common reasons nowadays.
Common. I mean, both parents and children are known to take the cell phone in the washroom, and I mean, they are reading it, browsing it when they are sitting on the commode seat for a long time. So these are some of the reasons, and I mean, we need to go into some details to find out as to which one is this. I mean, if you think that the child is spending too much time, the thing to do is sit with the child and warmly ask the child, "Beta, what is it? I mean, why are you spending much time?" I mean, you can be very frank with me. I'll try to understand. I mean, try to create an environment whereby the child can confess things easily to you. And then she might come out with the right answer.
Thank you, doctor. I'll skip one question because it's already been answered, and I'll go to the next question. Since sex is a state of mind and physical acts is a means to an end, how do I counsel my son at 12 years of age to get these fundamentals right and not make this taboo topic a deterrent for his adult life.
Yeah. I mean, for a 12-year-old, it would be, I mean, for example, if the child asks, Mama, what is sex? I mean, it could be something as general as that. I mean, your reply could be, I mean, if two people love each other, I mean, the kind of things that they do to express their love uh, can be called as sex. And then it depends on the further line of communication. Like if the child asks, how do babies come along? I mean, you could elaborate on that depending on his age. Like you could say when they sleep together at night, some fluid passes from father to mother, and then that creates the babies. So, I mean, these kind of honest answers without going into explicit details, they can be given. And like I said last time, don't worry too much about telling too much. पेरेंट्स थिंक डॉक्टर साहब उसको ये सारा बता दूंगी तो कहीं अब मेरे को पता नहीं कि इस एज में क्या बताना, मैं कहीं गलती से बहुत ज्यादा ना बता दूं. So I tell them don't worry about it, because if something that you tell the child is not appropriate for the child's age, it जो हम लोग कहते हैं ना overhead transmission हो जाता है. The child is not able to grasp it, he is not able to concentrate on that, and it simply bypasses his registration. So don't worry. I mean, he will grasp and retain things only appropriate to his age.
The question is, if we want to study the awareness of child sexual abuse, can we do for primary school students?
Certainly. I mean, these days, it's very important to you teach very small children. I mean, children may be as small as 4 years, 5 years of age. I mean, most of us have heard of things like good touch, bad touch. I mean, these are the things that need to be taught at this age. I mean, for a small child who is in KG2, first standard, it's completely okay to talk about the good touch, bad touch, and what to do in case somebody touches you here, how to respond to that, how to run to your parent and tell the parent as what happened. So these are the things that need to be taught exactly at this age. I mean, that is the right age for this. And it can be done by the parents at the school. See, because we know that when it comes to sexuality and sexual predators, I mean, age is no bar. I mean, even infants are raped. We know of infants being raped and killed. So when the child becomes verbal, when the child becomes old enough to understand what precautions need to be taken when, and that's the age when they start talking.
Doctor, can you please suggest the names of the books you now told? Did you refer to any book?
Yeah, I think last time I had mentioned 2 names. Shall I type them in the chat box?
Yeah, if it is there in the video 1, then I think they'll be able to, and we'll post also in the group, sir. Because it's 11:10 and you have next meeting just in a few minutes. So the question which you have answered before, but it is extended again, and the person wants to know that in homosexuality and gender incongruency, when you have to validate, listen and validate, so how this is to be done? Does it require to meet a psychologist?
It's not necessary to meet a psychologist unless the child is having some significant psychological problem which you cannot handle. So otherwise, it's not necessary to meet a mental health professional. The way to validate is, I mean, I would say 2 things. One is listen to the child patiently, and secondly, say something like, I understand this. I know that such a condition does exist, and I can understand you.
Yes.
And you are validated.
Yes, and I'm with you. Maybe I'm with you, and listen and just validate that I understand your feelings.
Yeah.
What is the normal frequency of masturbation in children?
It depends on the age. Like masturbation with a sexual intent, a true sexual intent, can begin as early as 10, 11 years of age. I mean, children less than that are known to play with their own genitals, but it's more of a comfort behavior rather than sexual masturbation. So sexual masturbation starts around puberty, when the puberty begins. More commonly, say around 13, 14 years of age. That's the most common age. And the frequency is highly variable. I mean, it varies from person to person. It's like frequency of intercourse varying in married couples. I mean, there are couples who have sexual intercourse every single day for a few years. There are others who don't have it for say, weeks together, even in spite of being married early, in the early part of the marriage. So it's like that. Commonly, it's, I mean, if I'm asked perhaps the most common frequency, it will be say once or twice in a week. But then there are no limits to it. I mean, if a child masturbates every single day, that's okay. Don't worry about it. I mean, that's the age. Adolescence is the age when sexual hormones start pumping in. I mean, the testosterone levels are high, say around 18, 19, 20 years of age. These are at the highest in males. So there's a time when the frequency of masturbation, sexual fantasy would be significant.
Last two questions, we'll quickly take it. Is it true to say that when mental vibes match, the two people, can the two people just feel personal intimacy in dreams, though it may not be in reality when one of the partner is married? This is a fantasy that probably she's talking about.
Let me understand the question. I mean, when the mental frequencies are matching, they are vibing only in dreams.
Yes.
But not in real life.
Not in real life. The one partner is married to somebody else.
Okay. I mean, so one of the two lovers is married to somebody else.
Yes. I suppose that's the question. Yes.
See, if the mental frequencies are matching, then there is no reason why the vibing should happen only in the dreams. That can happen in real life also. I mean, if my mental frequency matches with someone, if we vibe with each other, if a good rapport can be established. I mean, in dreams or ulta dreams तो कहीं उल्टा भी हो सकता है. Dreams का कुछ भरोसा नहीं है. But in the real life, you should be matching. You can match.
But the thing is, one partner is married. That's the catch.
Now that opens a Pandora's box.
Yeah. I know. So let's not get into it.
As I say, वो किस्सा फिर कभी.
The last question: in this generation of children, have their own Dr. Google and also WhatsApp. Yeah, WhatsApp University, I'll add. And sometimes it's misleading about sexual education. What are your views about this?
Yeah, I think that's a very, very important question because, I mean, these days, youngsters, I mean, browse on the internet very commonly. And very frequently, they get misinformation. They can get waylaid in sexual matters. So that can be really dangerous. And you know, WhatsApp University कहते हैं जिसको, I mean, WhatsApp also is very instrumental in spreading so many sexual myths that it can cause difficulties. So I think for a child, it's important that the parents tell the child that whatever sexual information that you get, let that not be from the internet or from WhatsApp or any social media, but we can refer to some books. You can ask us, you can ask the teacher, but don't rely on the internet to provide answers to you. I mean, even without the child talking of sex, you could introduce this thing during one of your conversations.
Thank you, doctor. Thank you so much. I mean, so many insights, and thank you so much for being with us for this 2 hours, part 1 and part 2, and more than 2 hours. And thank you. I think a lot of clarity has gone to all the parents, teachers, and counselors, and it's going to be a great help to everyone. Thank you so much, doctor. We are going to send a feedback form here in the group. Thank you for the last time you gave feedback. We are also asking for the topic that you would like to know more about. So you can post, you can write it there. Whatever topics you want to, we'll come up with more sessions for awareness. Thank you so much, doctor. You'll have to unmute. Sorry, there was some noise. So
I'm just thanking you for getting me here. It was a great pleasure for me also. A Sunday morning well spent for me. Thanks.
Thank you. Thank you, parents. And please do give us the feedback and also the topics that you would like to know more. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.